so much we still can't explain about faith and belief and the placebo effect. And, there's all these factors that play into a good argument for saying, I don't know, but I do find good pragmatic reasons to still search out spirituality in a way that works for me.
Or even Uchtdorf joking about how much they give. At the time, I thought that talk was hilarious. Now, when I think of all the time, I was like, that was a fucking part-time job. And for free. What the hell was I thinking?
It's just so interesting hearing this, because if you don't know too much about it, you might think, oh, this is just what the ex-Mormons are saying. It's like, no, this is indisputable history, that this was a huge theory at the time. You can find these examples from other churches and people all over trying to say that the Native Americans were a lost tribe of Israel, and people would even forge things to try and prove it. And we have multiple examples of that to kind of go with their theory. Like Christians, it doesn't matter where they go, they're going to see the world through the lens of Christianity.
Different stories to different people about polygamy, where he's like assuring people that it's all a lie and he doesn't practice polygamy, and at the same time he's pressuring and getting these revelations for these young girls about why they need to marry him, otherwise an angel with a flaming sword is going to kill him.
Covenant energy sword. Oh,
baby. It's another fart gun.
Fucking hilarious.
Anyway, sorry I got off on a Star Wars tangent.
No, you're good. That's what we're here for. I just want to chat and hang out and then maybe talk about our books a little bit. But
did it die? Mine's about to die too.
Oh my god, I knew I should have started.
She's gonna listen from right here. She's with me.
Okay. The main point of the chapter is it gets into the Moundbuilder myth and how it was super common at the time, where around New York and Ohio there is a super common myth, legend, that these huge mounds of buried bodies from the Native Americans, based on their formation and the tools and things that they found buried with them, they had decided and concluded, because of racist views, that the Indians couldn't have done that. They weren't advanced enough. And I think also to kind of justify their own subjugation of the Indians in the land, they wanted to paint them as more of, like a way to justify their actions. Like see them as the people who exterminated this more noble race that they... It's just so interesting hearing this, because if you don't know too much about it, you might think, oh, this is just what the ex-Mormons are saying. It's like, no, this is indisputable history, that this was a huge theory at the time. You can find these examples from other churches and people all over trying to say that the Native Americans were a lost tribe of Israel, and people would even forge things to try and prove it. And we have multiple examples of that to kind of go with their theory. Like Christians, it doesn't matter where they go, they're going to see the world through the lens of Christianity. And they had some of those views, and it colored their perceptions. And they have also the European divine right of kings, which is basically the idea that anyone in power, any king, he's there because God wanted him there. He appointed him there. Therefore, whatever he does is God's will. And, it's just such a pathetic way, in my opinion, of seeing the world and just justifying anything and just writing history however you want. And it's, but those kinds of ways of thinking did color their perception. So it was a huge theory at the time. And one thing I thought was really interesting, because I hadn't seen this quote in so long, and I was starting to wonder if it was even real, but Joseph Smith, in fact, let me just read. This is a good part to read an excerpt. Common legend in Ohio. Oh, wait, no. This is my own notes. Okay. This is the excerpt. There was universal admiration for the palisaded geometrical forts, the ruins of which were silhouetted against the sky atop the cone-like drumlins, whatever that means. I don't know what a drumlin is. That dotted the landscape. Since the pottery and copper ornaments buried in the mounds were frequently beautiful in design and skillfully wrought, few believed they were the handiwork of the despised red man. The Palmyra Register in January 1818 pointed out that the mound builders, quote, had made much greater advances in the arts of civilized life than any Indians. And the Palmyra Herald, God, and the Palmyra Herald in February 1823 insisted that the antiquities, quote, clearly proved them to be the work of some other people, unquote. This theory persisted for half a century that the mound builders were a race of peaceful farmers and metal workers who had been invaded and utterly exterminated by a bloodthirsty race that was ancestor to the modern Indian. William Henry Harrison, shortly before his election to the presidency, wrote that the last great battle took place on the banks of the Ohio, where a feeble band was collected, remnant of mighty battles fought in vain to make a last effort for the country of their birth, the ashes of their ancestors, and the altars of the gods. The mystery of the mound builders attracted no one more than Joseph Smith. According to his mother, he was spinning theories about them before he was 20. Quote, during our evening conversations, Joseph would occasionally give us some of the most amusing recitals that could be imagined. He would describe the ancient inhabitants of this continent, their dress, mode of traveling, and the animals upon which they rode, their cities, their buildings, with every particular, their mode of warfare, and also their religious worship. This he would do with as much ease, seemingly, as if he had spent his whole life with them. And I thought that quote was really cool because when you learn about him doing that before the Book of Mormon and how he would, there's other quotes like that too, where he would sit around the fire at night telling stories easily. I just think that if you look at these facts, and you're truly considering looking at it without any religious bias, you start to see that every single thing you thought was unique about the story, or I would say almost, if not every significant teaching or doctrine of Joseph Smith, you can find clear evidence of it being around him at the time. And almost, if not every significant teaching or doctrine of Joseph Smith has changed drastically. And both of those things are a big deal. But yeah, during this time, before he got the Book of Mormon, between, 1823 or 24 and 1827, those were the years where he didn't write anything in his autobiography. He didn't, he was too big. Those were the years he was doing the most treasure digging. He was actively, like, this is the time Moroni told him to prepare to cleanse himself to be able to receive the plates. And this is when he's doing the most telling people to do these ritualistic circles. Yeah, scamming. It's like either God does do that or he doesn't. Like, he used that to translate the Book of Mormon, that seer stone. The Urim and Thummim was only used on the 116 pages. Like, he used the same seer stone that he was using in a lot of these cases to tell people that spirits were dragging treasure away from the holes they're digging on his command. Like, does God do that? Because this is the time he's preparing to translate the Book of Mormon. And I don't know. I just think the timing of all these things is really interesting, seeing it play out like this. And
yeah,
because I hear from the church that he's stopped. You get the idea, at least from what they're saying, because you don't know much as a member, that he had stopped doing those treasure digging activities and he repented, and it's a totally separate thing when it was happening at the same time.
Yeah, pretty classic example of Joseph Smith, because he always had like different representations to different people about what he was doing in his life. Everything from when he was doing the treasure digging, when he was supposedly getting and translating the plates, different versions of the first vision, different stories to different people about polygamy, where he's like assuring people that it's all a lie and he doesn't practice polygamy, and at the same time he's pressuring and getting these revelations for these young girls about why they need to marry him, otherwise an angel with a flaming sword is going to kill him. And then, calls this printing press, says that they're lying about him because they start, publishing information about all these things he's doing, including like the militia that he assembled and refused to disband even when the governor ordered it. And that's why he was brought to Carthage, was because of treason, because he was literally trying to institute martial law, And so once you start to get just a basic picture that's not biased by the church and what they're trying to spoon feed you, these cherry-picked little quotes or philosophies of Joseph Smith, you're like, oh my God, this is a terrible human. Like, if anybody really knew him and knew about everything he had done, I don't think they would follow him,
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely done a lot of terrible things, and it is really complicated when you start to look into his psychology and compare it with like L. Ron Hubbard and other people, where they do seem to get high off their own supply. He does seem to really believe in seer stones to an extent, and it does seem like he, like I think there's room. Your arm's going crazy. Your controller must be
what the
somewhere
heck?
weird.
I've just got hand tracking on.
Oh, okay, no problem. Yeah, I don't know. I lost my train of thought, but it is complicated.
Yeah, like
Like,
sometimes
I don't think he's necessarily evil, but he does evil things, and
I think he was evil for
like
sure.
religion.
I mean,
I think he has. Okay, I try and keep an open mind, is what I'm trying to say, because I agree. There's a few. There's definitely that dark triad of tendencies and narcissism and things he seems to have, and the way he's able to justify things, but there's a couple different ways I could see, like, creating the psychology of someone capable of doing the things Joseph Smith did. But yeah, I definitely don't like him. To be honest.
Rose wanted to make a comment a little while ago about the Native American thing. She wanted to say, "God damn, that's so racist."
Yeah.
She didn't get the chance to make the comment. She asked me to tell you her comment.
Thanks, Rose. Yeah, it is interesting hearing like how this, like, obviously I barely summed it up, but the Moundbuilder myth was huge at the time, and it was a way of just the white settlers in general, who were heavily Christian, a lot of them, to see it through this lens of this lost tribe of Israel and them needing to reach out and restore the truth. And you see that heavily in the church when they were commanded to go take wives of the Indians, that their posterity may become white and delight some, and the way that in Utah the settlers ended up abducting children because they decided from their point of view that they're not in a good place and that they need to learn about the gospel, and that they would literally be changed into white people. Like, fucking crazy racist doctrines. It's so fucking insane to me that members today will not get it, like, will get offended when you talk about racism in the church, that it just sets them off. I'm like, you have no idea how heavily, like, reliant on racist narratives this entire religion is. It needed racism to get its foot in the door of early America, and it's been doing well based on that ever since, and only conforming as much as it's needed to the chagrin and the denials of the leadership until, I mean, I will say towards the end there's a lot more flexibility. There's mostly like Marky Peterson going out and just laying the law down, like saying just openly, you could make it to heaven, but as a servant, and just calling them inferior and all, just, just horrible things. And declaring it as
Rose has a comment.
Let's hear it.
Right. Here, let me know if you can hear.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Awesome.
They wrote that when you were talking, it reminded me of a part in the book that I was reading where it brought up Elizabeth Smart's case. And I don't know about you, maybe I just didn't look into it that closely, but I was under the impression that her abductor was like of Muslim faith or something like of that order. No, turns out he was Mormon. I didn't realize that detail until I read that in the book. And
Yeah.
also just like touching on, he was trying to follow the teachings of Joseph Smith. So when you brought up like people taking kids and things like that, I was like, yeah, he genuinely thought he was following the teachings of the church. And like, look how like closely that happened to our like current date, you know? Like this shit keeps happening.
Mhm.
Right. I mean, people
Yeah,
without
people.
knowing all the other horrible things about polygamy, and even if you deny that that was sexual with Fanny Alger or Alger or whatever, or Halimar Kimball, you can deny that all you want. We know it happened with later prophets, where you're seeing 65-year-olds marry teenagers all the time and having kids. Like, we know that people acting in the supposed name of God under the authority from Joseph Smith, from Jesus Christ, allegedly, are doing these things. So shut up. Yeah. So even outside of all that, like they read D&C 132 and they don't really think about what it's saying. They don't really know that Joseph Smith contradicted all of those rules, like not marrying a mother and daughter, or how they have to be virgins. He broke those rules, or the law of Sarah. He broke that rule.
Mhm.
If I call it the law of Sarah, when it's describing it, it says also you can ignore this one. You can ignore this one, Joe. If your wife isn't on board with you, getting married behind your back, well, that's on her for not listening to me, God. It's just so corny.
Yeah.
And then threatening that she'll be destroyed, like in that verse, if you don't get on board. And like most Mormons don't really think about that because they're not really reading the words individually. They're following like a lesson where they have carefully selected verses from D&C 132. I don't know.
Mhm.
It's crazy to me how
Yeah.
you don't even see that.
Cherry picked.
Yeah. All the lesson manuals are. But anyway.
Yeah, and they're constantly changing those too, because even those that they're cherry picking end up having teachings that later they're like, oh, like that was just a man who said that nobody's ever born gay. Or whatever, like there are plenty of things in manuals of the church that were taught for a really long time that they've walked back and been like, no, that was just someone's opinion. It's like, okay, what is doctrine? Like, what? Please define how I can tell when you are speaking for God and when you're just being an asshole, because there's no way to tell.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's like we were talking about how confusing quantum physics is and how much it doesn't make sense. No, try and define Mormon doctrine in a comprehensible way.
Yeah.
And the only way you can do it is if you don't know much about Mormon doctrine, which is most members. They'll like draw a little circle and they'll be like, okay, this in the middle is the doctrine. This is the policy. This is the culture. And I'm like, okay, you don't know about Mormon
and this
doctrine.
is the theory.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't know Mormon doctrine. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
You've never tried to make sense of the true mess. But hey, that was fun. I think we should call it anyway. Sorry.
Okay.
What were you saying, Rose?
Rose has one more comment.
Oh, hell yeah.
Uh-huh.
No, I was just trying to flood members with all this other shit so that they can't.
Oh, your voice keeps coming in and out. I heard trying to flood members with all this other shit.
Come
That's
close,
all I heard.
close.
Then get distracted by all this extra stuff.
I still can't hear you. I don't know how it worked before.
Oh man.
The microphones are very selective.
You talk and I'll tell him. Yeah, she says it seems like they're trying to purposely make it impossible for you to have the time or the resources to really get a full picture of the church and of its doctrine and its history, because they're constantly bombarding you, like we were talking about earlier, with all the responsibilities, ways that you're not living up to it. And then they're producing more content every 6 months that you need to be reading and studying and applying to your life, in combination with all of the regular church activities that are still going on.
Yeah, and just incredibly contradictory messages where it's like, okay, doctrine is established not only unanimously by the 12, but it also has to be supported canonically by the scriptures, which is past prophets. But then when they find out how much past prophets have said crazy, ridiculous things that they no longer believe, then they say, oh, actually, that's older stuff. That's overruled by whatever the current prophet says. But then, surprisingly, a lot of members don't think about what that actually means, especially with direct contradiction. It's almost like I don't know how, but that seems to work for a lot of members. Just be like, yeah, I don't just stop thinking there, because
Yeah.
logically that is not a sound statement when it comes to the contradictions of the church and its claims. It does not. It falls on every single account, but they
Mhm.
just never get there because they're like, all that matters is what the current prophet's teaching. And
Yeah.
there's so many
Never
problems.
mind that you have yeah, exactly. And never mind that you have statements that are unanimously endorsed by all the brethren, like about blacks in the priesthood and stuff like that, that later on they're like, nope.
Yeah, or all the
And just don't
doctrine
think
that
about that.
wasn't.
Don't ask about it. We don't know why. Even though there's there's been leaks of the actual minutes of those meetings where you get to actually see who's saying what and their actual opinions on this stuff. And it's like, holy shit,
Yeah.
basically just a racist board meeting where they're like, how do we
Racist
keep
board meeting?
how do we keep our keep our church pure and what's the word, oh man, I can't think of the word, attractive to people,
Appealing, or
appealing. Yeah, how do we keep our church appealing to the kind of people that we want to have in the church?
Hey, if you're gonna be a mini Spartan, I'm gonna be mini Boba Fett. Whoa, this is
Nice.
sick, dude. Yeah, no, well, it does run like a company, and they are hiring people based on business experience and how well they fall in line. Those backgrounds versus, historians or theologists, none of that is prioritized at all. And then people
Right.
wonder why they run like a business and are changing things to find a way to keep the next generation. Because right now they're stuck between a rock and a hard place where the new generation is exposed to the internet. They think they really are exposed to more ideas and they think more about this stuff. And they're also lacking, to, let's be honest, like first Gen Z, Gen Alpha, we have they have their own problems for sure. But on all fronts, it's not driving with the church. They have to
Yeah.
discount so many things they've said and done to retain the younger generation, but they're already losing the older generation every time they move even the slightest inch towards those changes.
Yeah.
Because
they were so extreme about the teachings in the first place and really drilled it into these people that this is God's will, this is eternal doctrine, this will never change, this is the truth. And then they change it and people are like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But more people are just like, yay, prophet. They just don't think about it. They're just like, whatever you say, daddy.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm a Mormon. I'm British. I like skateboarding. I have tattoos, and I'm a Mormon. Let's spend millions on that. Let's spend millions on telling the world we're Mormons. Next prophet, victory for Satan. Just literally, not just it's bad, but Satan rejoices when we use that, and shaming people forever doing that. And it's like, just that alone, why does that not make you guys think at least a little bit, or delve into the foundational core teachings on what it means to be a prophet and have that mantle in the first place? You would think. But anyways,
you would think.
That is
Love you, brother.
Love you too, man. And then on here, I think for now, because again, this is a niche within a niche within a niche. VR chat is a niche within VR. VR is already a niche. Exmormon's a niche of a niche religion. This is more of a side thing where it's like, this would be really cool. And I hope that, I know there are people out there right now that actually would be so down. But they're like, oh, my brother has a Quest or whatever, or it's just intimidating when you see people online in this space. And also, I'm on PC. I'm recording in PC. There's probably a lot of people even who see this. The small people who do, I doubt most of them understand how to join, or it's just so niche or niche. I've heard it both ways. Now I'm starting to question. I always said niche.
Yeah, I think it's niche.
I thought so too. And then I don't know. I've seen so many people recently now that I've thought about it.
Interesting.
Brother, relax.
My
Maybe it's
bad.
one of those. Maybe it's one of those things where we like just pronounce it
Holy
different here in
shit.
the States.
All right, all right.
Uh-huh.
Babe, stop. You're
I'm
distracting.
sorry.
That's enough futuristic military grade weaponry for once. Sit down.
Whoa. Wait, how do I... Oh, there we go. Sorry. Go on. Niche.
Oh yeah, no, you're good. I was just thinking, because I don't really. We're all so busy, and like, I don't know. I'm just not like a YouTuber of the type that's like. One thing I hate about YouTube is I feel like people who, especially now as it's become more competitive and algorithmic, like just the quality of just like what it takes to get views in certain spaces and what people are worried about. I feel like it just warps their psychology, and I don't want to be like that. So I mean,
Yeah.
there's very little I can do to share this as a anonymous person, to do it anonymously. I can't even get it started with like my friends and family on Facebook or something. So like I'm sure it'll take a while to reach people who actually know how to join. So I don't know. I'm just
For
thinking
sure.
like it's almost better for me to realize that and realize, I'm not going to be able to force connecting the people that this would help, and just take it super relaxed and be ourselves, and that's what it's all about anyway.
Yeah.
I tend to over
I am agree.
complicate things and be like, oh, this has to be a big oh my god, I forgot to cover this topic. It's like, shut up, dude.
Yeah.
Are you okay
No.
with being mini Master Chief? Why can I talk
Yeah.
today? Mini Master Chief. Master Shifu?
Eeny, meeny, minor Shifu. Yes, sir.
Hell yeah. Someone did join the group, like on VR chat, but they haven't joined in any
Nice.
of the activities yet. So who knows? I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of astrology, but I think it's way cooler than Mormonism.
Agreed.
And I think that people
Yeah,
who
I
like
don't.
it, that's
I
great.
don't believe in. Yeah, I don't believe in like any sort of mystic power behind it. I think it's just a useful way to think about things. I almost view it the same as I view prayer, where it's like it's a good way to guide your own meditation, your own like thought processes, and like sort through the things that you value and the choices you're making. Especially with tarot, like that's how I view it. It's like a way to guide a meditation. There's not really some mystical force that made you pull out that card, but the card describes a fundamental human experience or challenge or like event that connects with you, and you're like, whoa, that's so true about what I'm going through.
Yeah. Even knowing
which is why it's so effective,
how
and
it works,
people
it
do
doesn't-
believe in it.
Right.
And
I think it's fun to still kind of consider. I mean, I can't really find that for me personally in astrology, but like with tarot, when I'm trying to listen and just play with the idea that consciousness is what's fundamental to reality, and time and space and everything else, and all the wacky things we're finding out, which honestly I have found some things more interesting on that lately, like the quantum microtubules in neurons. Like there's a lot that is there's a lot that's connecting theories that used to be like looked at as crackpot theories, where they're starting to be like, wait, and finding that space and time isn't fundamental, and it breaks down at not too small of a level mathematically, and that local realism and determinism doesn't exist. Like there's so many things in physics we assumed that are completely upside down from what we thought, especially when it comes to quantum physics. And it's like one thing that has always tied a lot of them together in a way is the idea that consciousness itself is the fundamental reality and everything else takes place within it. And it's crazy because it's so nearly impossible to test anything like that, obviously. There's just like little clues and reasons why people think, well, if that is the case, maybe that's why exploring the self has always been a key to discovering core spiritual truths. But your consciousness is being filtered through a finite meat sack, quantum tube biological fat computer. And so obviously all religion and everything is just a semblance of truth in a way that we can package it in our current situation, if that's again the most charitable, trying to find a way to look at it in a positive, hey, there could be truth here. And that's how I like to look at it, because I do think that from a logical benefits, pragmatic approach, having spiritual beliefs is absolutely a good thing until it becomes dogmatic and you are like, oh, this isn't a hope. I know this. And I like how it makes me feel when I say I know it. That's where it starts becoming toxic. But like, there's indisputably so many and so much we still can't explain about faith and belief and the placebo effect. And, you know, there's all these factors that play into a good argument for saying I don't know, but I do find good pragmatic reasons to still search out spirituality in a way that works for me.
Yeah, for sure.
I agree.
And so I tried doing that when I did the tarot card. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you're good. I was just gonna say, yeah, I agree. Like, I think like people's philosophical or spiritual theories should be theories, you know, and it should be.
Yeah.
It seems to me that this could be the case, you know, and like, it just doesn't make sense for anybody to go so far beyond that, where they're like, you know, fully believing without evidence that like this is the one true religion or, you know, philosophy, and that everybody needs to, you know, comply with that framework for their lives.
Right. I mean, it makes sense evolutionarily. It's strong for groups to operate like that, but it's also, it's not the truth, and it can cause more harm than good. But from a survival standpoint, like, it makes a lot of sense that we are programmed to, predisposed to thinking and living like that. Let's transition that into today's. Oh, Rose, you want to go up? You up first or me?
Sure, I can go first. Let me grab my book. So I wanted to talk about the chapter that I was reading most recently. I've really been enjoying the book overall, and I feel like it's making excellent points, which is why I'm also like really more and more motivated to like want to share this with my dad specifically more than anyone else. Just because I feel like, if anything else, not because I'm trying to sway him, but I feel like there's, I don't know, I get the vibe, there's a desire to better understand, you know, like at least that's the impression I got with like the last time that we talked, which was just clarifying to my parents. It's like, no, this is real, this is my choice. But anyway, just to summarize, I'm reading Recovering Agency by Luna Lindsay Corbden. And with the section is in the first part. She has it divided in different stuff, but it's in the first part of the book, and it's the section called All Is Not Well in Zion. And here in this chapter, she's touching on kind of like, we had already covered like what a cult is, and like by definition, and like the nuances of all of that, and then also covered what like the different types of mind control techniques that cults will use to persuade their members. So at this stage, we're talking about like, okay, but the Mormon Church doesn't seem malicious, you know, like, and all of that. And so I want to read this because I just love how she like phrased it. So oh, I probably covered my mic. My bad.
Oh, sorry, you were talking. Nice catch.
Yeah, I was waiting too. I was like, maybe she's finding it.
Sorry, awkward.
No worries.
Okay. So she says, so what's the big deal? Mormons are happy, clean, fun, moral, upright, gentle people. Why rock the boat? If mind control can improve lives, who is it hurting? But too often, the happiness, like choice, is an illusion made of pressed suits and modest dresses on cheerful families, all striving blissfully for a life full of blessings. For far too many Mormons, those outward smiles are merely shadow puppets of the cave wall, or on the cave wall, because she had given the story of Plato's allegory of the cave, which was talking about like a set of prisoners that were all like bound to the floor, looking at a cave wall with the light behind them, always being able to see the shadows of people walking by, but never able to see them. And then after one of them was set free, he went out into the world and was immediately overwhelmed by the brightness of the sun, the amount of people, like just everything was overstimulating because of all of the seclusion he had experienced in his life. And at first it was shocking, it was uncomfortable, but then he got used to it and wanted his friends to experience the freedom that he had been experiencing, and goes back and tries to convince them of that it's not so scary and that you can come out there. And I loved the analogy, and overall it was just like a really good chapter, and made I feel like resembled, not resembled. What am I thinking of?
Represented?
Resonated.
Nice.
Resonated.
You guys just resonated.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I've gotten pretty good at like the guessing the word that she's looking for.
I'm good with. Oh shit! What do I do when I say a name? What do I have to do? What's the penalty? Or just something simple. So
you have to give $5.
No.
That's the rule for everyone.
No.
Oh wait, I just said a name. Now I have to give me $5.
Oh no. Typical.
I don't think that worked.
I'm gonna give myself a light.
I'll say you have to say you're a goofy goober.
I'm a goofy goober. Yeah. All right, no more goofy goobers. Subconscious, lock it in. Get your shit together, man. All right, sorry, back to you.
No, you're good. But yeah, to kind of circle back with what I was mentioning to you about wanting my dad to like also read this book, I feel like that chapter resonated with me a lot because of what I've been feeling and just wanting to share a little bit of that freedom, because like I appreciate my dad a lot, and the things that he has been patient about with like family life, and my mother, who's no easy person to be a partner to, but a wonderful person nonetheless. And like being mature enough to like address things in his life even when he's, you know, a little closer to like the later end of his life, you know, like he's reading a book on like how to cope when you've had an abusive mother. I was very surprised to hear that he was reading that book and like trying to address his psychological trauma. And I found out it was a lot motivated because of all of the work my sister and I have been doing with going to therapy to address our trauma so that we can move on with our lives. And my sister mentioned she had specifically asked him to more seriously address the things that had happened to him, and he listened. And so I feel like if it comes from me and then like is an appropriate thing, I think he would benefit a lot from reading this book. Maybe not to the point where he would want to leave the church necessarily, but I think it could help him have a lot more peace with different things that have been going on in his life, if that makes sense.
And understanding of where you're at and why some of these things that he considers good and helpful and positive that he wants to bring into your life or into my life might not have the same effect or the same feeling on the receiving end when we've been through trauma that he might not quite relate with. And yeah, I agree. I think both of your parents have been incredibly supportive and understanding as far as, you know, trying to make sure that they like really respect where you're coming from and your choices and things like that. So it's really cool.
Yeah, I love cool seeing peeps. That. It still would kind of blow my mind that they're willing or capable of reading a book with a title like that, like that has Mormon mind control in it. Because without, again, like a psychological perspective on what mind control means and that it's not this crazy. Because, you know, they're thinking of this beautiful, wonderful religion that only does positive things. And they see a term like that, it's game over for like 99.9% of active Mormons.
Yeah.
But who knows? I don't know them like you do, and maybe they will.
Sure.
or maybe you can find certain excerpts that gets them interested. Because I do remember, might have been that chapter, All Is Not Well in Zion. It might have been soon after that, but I know definitely throughout the whole book, like it brings up so many examples that really bring to light, from suicides to, like conversion therapy to issues and psychological problems that wouldn't be there, to, just so much that
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
realize this is really, it's all happy-go-lucky on the surface, but this directly alters the courses of people's lives, often for the worse. And it's only once a certain number of negative things stack up to a point that it's less psychologically overwhelming to consider it, maybe this whole thing wasn't true, which takes a lot to get there when that's been your entire
Yeah.
life. For most people, it takes
Yeah.
until it gets near that point before they can even truly consider looking into everything that's been there the whole time that they were just sure was anti-Mormon nonsense, And if you
So
don't mind me
anyway, those are
asking,
things that are like strongly molded.
where is it you're seeing your family heading that you don't like?
I just feel like they're developing. We used to have this like really strong closeness, like very almost like mafia family vibes, if that makes sense, type of closeness. Like you fuck with one of us, you fuck with all of us
Yeah.
type stuff. And as it gets bigger, you can't always keep that type of closeness. I get it. So then I feel like the control has been shifting more to wanting to control the strong values that we hold to as a family. It's not about just going and doing fun things, since we're all busy and have our own lives. It's starting to become more precise situations where we get together, which is all centered around the church. And now we're all turning into adults. And I know for a fact that me and my little cousin are not, I want anything to do with the church. And I have another 16-year-old cousin that's lesbian. And I have another little cousin that I highly suspect is like
Yeah.
tiptoeing, like she
There's
still lives
signs.
at home. And like my family definitely, my mom and all her siblings have anger problems, like temper issues. And so most of the kids live intimidated by like at least one parent. Except thankfully I think the one that had the best temper, which was my mom.
Really? Because I've heard some things.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Well, that
Out
should
of
tell
her
you.
siblings, though, yeah, she's probably the least hot-headed.
I mean, I've mostly heard cool
And
things, like the shotgun
yeah,
story
she's
on
a
her
really
mission where
cool
she
person.
improvised with the shotgun sound to scare out an intruder. That was badass.
With the toaster.
Yeah,
That was
so
a
fucking
toaster.
cool.
Ching-ching.
Yeah, I think it sounds like. I mean, thanks for sharing that, by the way. I think it's cool that your
Yeah.
dad is at a point where he's able to read about like abusive relationships, and I mean that also might be a good sign towards you being able to share. And for me personally, I felt kind of back and forth on talking to my parents about it too, because I don't want them to leave necessarily unless there's a way that could happen in a healthy way at this point. So it's very complicated, but in a way it's nice to talk about it enough that you feel more understood and more respectful of each other's positions. And I think until
Yeah,
you get
and
to the
like
point you can openly be honest with each other about how you feel and a little bit about why. You don't have to go super in depth. They don't have to read all this stuff,
yeah.
but enough that they understand that you are not this lazy learner, or that you're not doing horrible things that are hurting you, like enough for that to happen.
Yeah, like when I talked to them last time, I think it was last year in June, like I had them read, like I asked them, I checked first, but my parents, especially my mom, is not the type of person to back down from a challenge. I asked if they wanted to read what it was that made me decide to leave the church. I was like, it's very simple if you want to know the like exact thing that made me decide, even though it's one thing amongst several things.
Yeah.
And it was blood atonement. And they read everything that I had brought, which was like put together kindly by I'm a goofy goober. By Rob.
By Rob.
Goofy goober alert. Hey, get that subconscious in shape. Are you listening? Subconscious, internalize this look of disapproval.
Rob put the research together, which helped me not have to do a bunch of painful research. Because if it had dragged out, I feel like for me that would have just been more painful than it needed to be. And having all the information there and concise was, I mean, still painful, but I think it was better to rip the Band-Aid off. I don't know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I do think that him reading about abusive relationships, it's hard to miss certain key things like unquestionable authority of this person who is, you know,
Mhm.
representing for whatever reason, whether it's divine command or they just teach you and condition you to think that they are just so much smarter than you can't question them. Or blame reversal when something goes wrong or they do something wrong somehow and it ends up being your fault. Like, there's a lot of things in abusive relationships that directly correlate where they might start to see, oh wow, I see how this unfair dynamic of power and blame like represents what happens in my religion. Who knows? He might be ready at some point. Might help him open up to that book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm planning on doing this patiently. I don't want to rush it. I'm not trying to hurt him or anyone in my family, but this is just something that I feel like is something that I should work towards.
Awesome. I love your family.
Yeah. Thanks.
I didn't see
I
them
love your
often,
family.
but oh, thank you. But their bird, I'm not even saying their name because I am not a goofy goober anymore. Knock on wood.
Yep. Many individuals and families in the church who seem happy, who seem perfect, are not. Outside the cave, it is easy to find accounts from current and former members who have been putting on a show. And just wanted to touch on that, which is like, I don't think that's uncommon knowledge. I feel like that's very common knowledge in like a certain type of member that every member knows about and doesn't think that they are.
So true.
But a lot more of them fall under this category than I think that they're willing to admit. And that was really damaging for me as a person because I felt like I was doing something wrong because I was clearly not as happy as all of these people are when I'm trying really hard, and I just assumed, well, I need to live the gospel more perfectly. That's what my problem is. Then I'll feel happy. And it like wore me out until I had no more to give.
Relatable. I think that happens to more than most members care to admit. I mean, but even most members will. It's so funny because even on my mission, I remember it talks about that. Like, you hear these one certain ridiculous side of things your whole life, and then all of a sudden one guy gives a talk where he's like, hey, why are you thinking like that? What are you talking about? Why are you trying to be perfect? And it's like, because that's what I've been like how I've been conditioned to think my whole life. And then they give out like one talk from the other, like, wait, why is everyone so fucked up over this?
Yeah.
Over what we
You're
taught
like
them, how
saying
we
one
taught them to
thing,
think.
but then you're...
Be ye therefore perfect, he said, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Paul indicated that all could attain perfection. The fact that most of us are far from perfection is not that we can't, but that we don't. Let me say then that perfection is still our goal. It is reached by climbing and steadily upward, controlling all our desires, impulses, and urges. It is possible. Remember that the Lord gave us Abraham as an example and quoted him often. We have made promises and covenants that inasmuch as any man belonging to the order shall be found a transgressor, or in other words, shall break the covenant with which he has been bound, he shall be cursed in his life, and shall be trodden down by whom I will. For I, the Lord, am not to be mocked in these things. The path has been charted, and the way has been found, and man is left without excuse if he does not follow it. And becoming the master of oneself cannot be accomplished in little spurts and disconnected efforts. There must be constant and valiant, purposeful living, righteous living. Man can transform himself, and he must. Man has in himself the seeds of godhood which can germinate and grow and develop. Like the acorn becomes the oak, the mortal man becomes a god. Changes can come best if we take one item at a time. For instance, it's not difficult to be perfect in tithe paying. For if one pays 1/10 of his income annually, he is perfect in that respect. To be perfect, then, one must begin early in his life. He or she must become the perfect husband, the perfect wife, the perfect father, the perfect mother, the perfect leader, and the perfect follower. One's marriage must be perfectly performed and perfectly kept on a hallowed plane. One must keep his life circumspect.
Satan has somehow managed to make covenants and commandments seem like curses and condemnations. For some, he has turned the ideals and inspiration of the gospel into self-loathing and misery-making.
Influencing us this one way while you're saying one thing, like the contradictions and like, no, we're so happy, we're so low, like, or even Uchtdorf joking about how much they give. At the time, I thought that talk was hilarious. Now, when I think of all the time, I was like, that was a fucking part-time job. God damn it. And like for free. What the hell was I thinking?
Like,
And then a full-time job on the mission.
And then a
for
fucking
free.
full-time job.
That you paid
I
for.
paid
Not only
them.
for free, you pay.
you paid
I
them to do it. What were we thinking?
God damn it.
Nice.
And not too long after that is when they changed our requirements so that made it shorter hours for people. I think they didn't get the same, like at first, like, yeah, the members that were still there thought it was hilarious, but I think it ended up pointing it out. They're like, hey, wait, that is a lot of time that we're giving to the church. And I think maybe they got some feedback.
I think they realized what a barrier to entry it is for a lot of people who maybe are interested and like going to church and have gone to churches their whole life, and maybe they're interested in checking out the LDS church, and they're like, wait, 3 hours on Sunday plus whatever callings plus an activity during the week plus home teaching and going to the temple and all these things that are like, it's expected of you. And they make statements like, hey, if you pay your tithing and you're a good member and you go to church and stuff, that's not enough. Like if you're a believing member and you're not doing your family history, like that was one that they used to always bring up. They're like at Judgment Day, you will have to answer for why you didn't do that. It's like constantly adding pressures where it's impossible to fit the mold. It's impossible to be the perfect performing member at all times throughout your entire life. And that's the point,
Right.
It's to put you in that place where you feel less than, you feel less worthy, you feel like you need them and their forgiveness and their grace and their guidance. But in reality, they're the ones making you feel that way in the first place. They're the ones making you feel like crap, and then they're selling you the fake medicine.
Making you sick so they can sell you the cure, and they don't even know it either, because they're part of the same damn conditioning system. And yeah, I mean, I wasn't gonna bring it up, but there's so many talks where they're talking there. You have mixed messages on if perfection is achievable in this life and why we should be striving for it. You're taught from the moment you learn what masturbation is, you learn how evil it is. You have hushed tones talking about privates, if you're in a family like ours, at least, where I didn't know how to pronounce the word penis. And I read it. I didn't even know it. I learned it from an anatomy book when I was like in 5th grade, and I thought it was penis.
Well, like, I'm a 29-year-old woman, and I still have heavy shame associated with masturbation.
Yeah.
And I've been out of the church for like 7 years.
Yeah, I mean, there's all this shame on like not reading your scriptures enough every single night when you know like what else positive you're doing, and maybe it's good to get some variety on your sources of what you're putting in your brain. Not enough prayer. Are you paying a full tithing? Are you doing all of those things you talked about? The list just doesn't end. There's like over, you drink coffee? Wait, Dr. Pepper? Oh, you
Mhm.
you wore a bikini
You
to
drank
the
black
pool party?
tea.
Yeah, you drank tea? I mean,
You had
we
sex
could.
before marriage.
Yeah, masturbation or porn is bad enough, and the fact that you don't know when you're in that religion and you've never even been able to talk about sex with your parents, you don't know that all the other boys are doing it. You genuinely think you're a monster, and you're struggling
Yeah.
in a soul-tearing
That's
struggle
so
to
awful.
overcome that urge, and you're telling yourself, if I just believe and pray and fast, that it won't be like I'll be able to stop completely. And so I ended up developing a really unhealthy mental dynamic because of that. That is still with me today,
Mhm.
still causing problems for me today. And that's just one
Yeah.
little tiny thing, but like every aspect of your life, when you actually examine what this is doing to people and why people have this perfection mentality where they are bullied and gaslit for every single little thing they didn't do perfectly, or any time they give a patriarchal blessing or a promise from someone of the prophet, or or smaller things or commandments or promises in the scriptures, and they're not happening. It's always, it's your fault. You're the problem.
Mhm.
You're the problem. You didn't do that little thing perfectly. It's just this weird contradictory message that I feel like you're always in a state of cognitive dissonance where you're having to compartmentalize certain promises and things and only pull out the ones that are working right then, and what messages from the prophet can shame you into feeling motivated enough to keep working towards making that thing happen. It's like you don't even
Yeah.
know how much you're compartmentalizing when you're in it. It sucks. It sucks that that's a lot of people's
100%.
lives. And it sucks that
Yeah.
marriage too, like we were talking about divorce and how it's looked at this sad, sad thing. And it's
Or
like,
like some sort of failure on the part of like the
yeah,
individuals when no, like I can understand why older generations feel that way, and that it was definitely like the stigma of the time that you should never, ever, ever get divorced. But it's inevitably become a lot more common, and I think it's because people are becoming more mature enough to like work through their like, I don't know,
yeah,
figure out that this is probably not the best fit. You don't always just get it on the first try.
Yeah, and
Shocking.
you don't need to stay in an unhealthy relationship out of, obligation and, honor, and the fact that, like, well, this was an agreement you made, and so if you're miserable, just stick it out anyway. And like that's such a terrible way to look at life. Like obviously every relationship is going to have things where you just need to deal, and you need to, like, give it time, give it communication, give it understanding to get over those challenges. That's true, right? You don't want to just give up on a relationship because it's not perfect. But if you're with somebody that isn't compatible for you, that messaging is really damaging.
Anyway,
Yeah,
thanks
Rose
for
was
hanging
suggesting
out,
that too. She's like, yeah, of course. Good to see you, brother.
You too. Miss you. Even though I saw you the other day, I just haven't been very social lately.
Yeah, let's hang out.
I feel bad.